fight it off. So, here we are. I am your host, Mark Zapata, the owner and founder of Mark Z Drums. I can be found across all platforms, Mark Z Drums, except for X. X is gone. YouTube, Mark Zapata Drums. Everything else, Mark Z Drums. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Patreon, building out the Patreon, and MarkZDrums.com, my website, where you will be able to find very soon a drum instructional course that will live on my website that you will have access to. And you can come and visit me here on Mark Zapata Drums on YouTube to decide if my course is something that might interest you. You get a little glimpse and a little taste of what I do here by checking out my other videos. I'm working on some new instructional videos that will be coming up soon, and some other drum covers and things like that. And of course, there's always the content I've already put up. There is always the live performance videos of myself playing concerts and other things on my YouTube channel. So please go ahead and explore, and feel free to jump on the chat. It would be great to talk to anybody, to field some questions, or just to have a chat with whoever is on the channel right now. I know it's a tough time of day because it is in the afternoon. Maybe people are on their lunch breaks, but it is in the afternoon and people work. Of course, I do not work till later in the day. I do teach full time, in person, in schools, in clients' homes, virtually online. I also direct a number of student bands, which has been really, really cool, challenging, but very rewarding and very, very fun as we prepare our bands to perform at different events around town, as well as the final end of semester show or showcase where they can show everybody how hard they've worked, culminating in this show where they perform their songs. So I've been working with a new band with a whole new set of challenges, but after a couple of weeks, I have a pretty good game plan in mind as to what we are going to do to be the best band ever in the world. Okay, so what are we talking about today? We are talking about bringing our levels up. We are talking about progressing. We are talking about challenging ourselves, pushing our own limits, and I have some tips for you to do that. Okay, we will be getting into the meat of this as we move forward. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit of technical stuff. I want to talk a little bit about beats, and I'm going to play a few beats for you, and I'm going to talk to you about them. The first beat I'm going to do is a straight eighth note beat, where we're going to be playing eighth notes on the hi-hat and various bass drum patterns and snare drum patterns within the eighth note framework. Something like this. If you notice, all of my bass drums and snare drums are hitting on the hi-hat, which means we are hitting on the eighth notes. Let's do the same thing a little faster. We're going to bring the speed up a little bit. Okay, again, all eighth notes on the hi-hat, nice and steady, speed brought up a little bit. All bass drums and snare drums landing on the hi-hat. So we're still playing eighth notes on the bass drum and on the snare drum. Let's vary up the snare drum part a little bit. And something like this. Okay, so here you have, again, eighth note hi-hats. Looks like the sneezing has gone away. I'm going to have to deal with that after the show. Vitamins, echinacea, some emergency. I think I have some in the kitchen. Just to be sure to bring up those levels of vitamin C, to bring up those levels of germ-fighting things in my body, right? Listen, I'm a medical doctor, so these are technical terms that might be over your head, but rest assured it works. Okay, anyway, eighth notes, different kind of snare patterns now on the hi-hats. Everything's still on the hi-hat, can still be pretty interesting. Rock and roll, basic rock and roll stuff, is going to be eighth notes on the hi-hat, varying bass drum patterns, and sometimes varying snare drum patterns. Not as much snare drum variations as we see bass drum variations in different rock songs, but they certainly do exist, and they certainly are fun to play. And if you notice, a lot of kind of different feels, stuff that might have felt a little different, stuff that might have felt that had a little bit better of a groove, sometimes delaying the second snare drum in the measure till the end of 4 instead of on the 4. Things like that are pretty cool. Now, I want to continue the eighth notes on the hi-hat, but I would like to add even more notes for my bass drum and my snare drum, more note possibilities. And that would be playing 16th note patterns on the bass drum, or combinations of eighth note and 16th notes within each beat on the bass drum. So as we've spoken about before, in a basic 4/4 time signature, each beat can hold 1 quarter note, 2 eighth notes, 4 16th notes, 8 32nd notes, or any combination of eighth notes and 16th notes, or eighth notes, 16th notes, 32nd notes. But each beat must add up to 1 beat, okay? Each group of notes per beat need to add up to 1 beat. So that's why we do not combine quarter notes with anything, because they are equal to 1 beat themselves. When we get into the smaller notes that are less than a beat, for example, a half a beat, which would be an eighth note, or a quarter of a beat, which would be a 16th note, or an eighth of a beat, which would be a 32nd note, which we do see, not as much, but they are a smaller, faster note. Then we now have more possibilities. So I'm going to play some 16th note bass drums, and I'm going to do all of the 16th note bass drums in a measure to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So if we're playing eighth notes on the hi-hat and 16th notes on the bass drum, we're playing twice as many notes on the bass drum and they're smaller, so they're faster. They're twice as fast as the notes I'm playing on the hi-hat, like so. Depending on how you're counting it, you could also say I'm doing quarter notes on the hi-hat, eighth notes on the bass drum. But let's stick to the eighth notes on the hi-hat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Okay, so more notes, and if you notice, the 16th notes that I'm playing are going to occur in between the hi-hats. Like 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and okay. The E's and the U's being played on the bass drum, the upbeats and the downbeats, the ones and the ands being played on the hi-hat. 1 E and 2 E, 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and okay. I hope the delay is not messing up. Hold on, let's try. So we can do a lot of really cool stuff with 16th note, 8th note bass drum combination patterns and 8th note, 16th note snare drum combination patterns. And depending on how you're writing the music, if you're including the bass drums and the snare drums together, we could do that as well. And that's also a fun way to So you notice that some of my bass drum notes and my snare drum notes are occurring while this snare drum stick, this hi-hat stick is up in the air, right? So it's absolutely the opposite of the eighth notes, which is where the E's and the U's live. So a lot of songs do play around with 16th note snare drums, grace notes, ghost notes, things to kind of move the beat along. Smells Like Teen Spirit. And a lot of other songs, Red Hot Chili Peppers, for example. A lot of ghost notes, a lot of things that come in between the hi-hats and not exactly always on the 2 and the 4 for the snare drum part. Sometimes you'll notice that for brief periods of time, we have a single stroke roll going between the hi-hat and the snare drum, where my right hand is playing on the hi-hat, my left hand is playing on the snare drum. Sometimes it occurs for just a couple of notes, and that's enough to give the beat itself, the snare drum pattern, a little more interest. So this is a way that we can spice up our beats. So what I would encourage you to do is absolutely always continue working on your single stroke rolls. Just simply right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And then start to move those single stroke rolls around different parts of the drum set. Because the more you get used to playing those single stroke rolls and getting them up to speed and getting them really solid, you can start to incorporate them in between your snare drum and your hi-hat when you're playing beats, or even moving completely to the hi-hat with 16th notes, which I like to do for some songs. Sometimes leading with the left hand, bringing the left hand down to the snare, or sometimes keeping the left hand on the hi-hat and bringing the right hand from the hi-hat to the snare, like I was doing earlier. Which is another way I like to do hi-hat centric beats with 16th notes on the hi-hat, bringing over the right hand on the 2 and the 4 for the snare. All kinds of different ways to play it, but work on those single stroke rolls because they really do help with playing really cool figures on the drum set during your drum beats. And again, when we're playing eighth notes, because eighth note is the smallest note we're playing in the beat, in the rock beat, that's as small as we have to count. If we want to start playing 16th notes on the bass drums and on the snare drums, we can then start to count 16th notes, and it'll make it easier for us to understand exactly what's going on. And especially if we're trying to figure out a beat that is played like that, where are those extra bass notes hitting? We count the 16th notes instead of the 8th notes. So there you had some 16th note bass drum notes peppered in there. I want to do just the pads without the drum sounds so that you can hear my count. And when I'm listening to a song, if it has a bass drum pattern similar to that, I can pinpoint exactly where those bass drums are hitting based on my own count. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a, right? Notice my hi-hats are still hitting only on the 8th notes, but I'm counting the 16th notes in between. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 4 E and a. So there you can hear how I am counting along so that I can pinpoint where those 16th note bass drums are hitting. And then if you could slow it down if you need to, that's cool too. But that's a lot of fun when we start to get into funkier songs, more groove bass songs, funk music in general, jazz, things like that, that have a little more movement and don't sound quite as, I would say, plodding as an eighth note rock beat. Eighth note rock beats are really cool, and there are things you can do using space between notes that can make them very interesting. But for me, those extra 16th note bass drums and 8th note, 16th note combinations on the bass drum really makes things super interesting. So how do we propel ourselves and our playing to the next level? I promised you 3 epic tips to improving. We talked about this on another show. I'm not going to say something as simple as practicing, because to me that's a given. When we are learning anything in life, we need to practice it. Sports, any kind of art, whether it be music, whether it be artwork, if you are an artist, voice acting, anything, acting in general, anything you're doing in your life requires practice. And so the first tip I will give you is, do not allow natural talent to be a deterrent to practice. I see this a lot in my students. I've experienced it myself. If you have a certain amount of natural ability at anything, unfortunately, that could lead us to not find practice as important. You can say, well, you know, I'm pretty good as I am. People tell me that I'm really good. People like what I'm doing. So, you know, I'm good. Well, to a point, to a degree, if that's where you want to be, fine. But that natural ability comes with it even more potential for your playing ability. So the more natural talent we have, the greater we can be, the more we can accomplish, the more we can do. So don't allow that natural ability and all of the positive feedback you get from people to put you in that mindset, that attitude that you don't need to practice, that you don't need to work. We can all use practice. We can all get better. And depending on what we want to do with our instruments, with our craft, my co-host is trying to come in. And I will let him in a minute. But don't let those gifts that you have, those natural gifts that you have, put you in that mindset where, hey, I don't have to practice, right? That's number one. And so practicing to me is a given. It's something that we need to do as much as we can, every time we can, because the whole idea is to push ourselves, right? The whole idea is to push our limits, right? To try to reach heights and goals that we haven't yet, or that maybe we don't know that we can, or we're not sure that we can. So the idea is not to limit ourselves. The idea is not to decide that we don't need to work. We always need to work. And I will offer you this little tip, this little trick. In addition, is that give yourself a good, we could start off with a week of practice. If you're somebody that doesn't practice, you don't feel like you need it, give yourself a week, work on something that you may feel you want to get better at, or whether it is a song that you want to learn and you haven't quite gotten it yet. But when you do sit down and play, you like to play this song, but you're not really nailing it because you're not practicing it. You're just having fun playing it. Give yourself a week of consistent practice, 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, every day for a week, and that includes the weekends. 15, 20 minutes is not a lot out of your day to put towards this. And at the end of that week, honestly evaluate if you have made progress, if you can play that song better, if you are faster, if you are reading music better, whatever it is that you decide to focus on for that week. Honestly evaluate where you are at the beginning of the week, where you are at the end of the week, and then you can have a better understanding or a better opinion of whether or not practice works. I often bring my students in for a lesson, and we will do a 5-minute practice session within that lesson of something. And I will try to point out to them, hey, look, remember how you started this 5 minutes ago? Look how much better you're playing this now after concentrating and focusing on it for 5 minutes. Imagine if you did it for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and you did it every day of the week, or at least 4 days a week, however many days you could fit in, but you committed to it. What do you think that would do for your playing? How much further and faster do you think you will progress? So then after a week, if you find that it's helpful and beneficial, try to stretch it out to 2 weeks. See if you can keep it going. See how long you can keep it going. See if you can make a habit out of it. Okay, so one of the tips is to try to find the value in practice. And think about what you think of practice. Think about what your own idea of practice is. How do you feel about practice? Does it work? Does it not work? Is it a waste of time? Is it essential? What are your thoughts on practice? And then give yourself that time to really test out your theories. After a week, did I improve? Am I better? Do I feel better playing something that I was uncomfortable with before? Am I faster? Do I have more endurance? Do I get less tired? You know, all of this stuff. Does the song sound better that I'm playing? All of those things. Give yourself that time to challenge your own beliefs about practice and your playing. The other thing is listening. We have to make sure that we listen. One of the things that I'm going to bring up to one of my bands that I've been working with for a little while now is the fact that I believe that all the members of the band do not listen to each other. They listen to themselves. They listen to what they're doing. They're only interested in what they're doing. And when you're new to a band situation, this could be a way that you approach your instrument. So we have to make sure that we are listening to everybody around us so that we can understand what's happening and lock in with our bandmates. If we don't do that, it very much does sound like everybody's playing their own thing in a vacuum. So make sure we open our ears, make sure we listen to our bandmates. Make sure that we have eye contact, especially drummers, bass players, eye contact. People are looking at each other during rehearsals. I understand during a performance, you want to be focused on the crowd, but by then, you should have less of a need to communicate with each other. All of that's done behind the scenes at rehearsal. And when you're ready for the show, you go up there, you know your parts, you know your things. You're still kind of looking and checking in with each other, but it's not as much as it would be in a rehearsal situation. You're focused on the audience. You're performing for the people that came to see you play. Okay, so that's another tip to elevate our playing, not only as individuals, but within a band situation with other musicians. Timing is super important. As a drummer, it is all important. We could have the flashiest, fastest hands in the galaxy, but if our time is bad, then we're pretty much useless as a drummer, except unless we're being a soloist and we're just one drum set in the middle of a stage with nobody else around us and we're soloing really fast. Okay. There's not a lot of call for that. Just saying. Okay, so the third tip to getting us to another level is mindset. We want to work on our mindset. We want to make sure that we understand where our head is at. How do we feel about our playing? How do we feel about ourselves as musicians? How do we feel about where we're at and what we're doing and what our playing sounds like? What do we feel about what other people think of our playing? You know, I've come across a lot of students that are really good and they're good performers and they're good players. And, you know, as we all do, have a long way to go or have some way to go. Always getting better, always improving. But even despite all of the positive feedback and praise that they get, still see themselves as not very good or terrible or whatever the words that have been used. I've spoken to a lot of students that have a very skewed idea of themselves and their playing. Also in the other direction, you know, a student can say, I can do everything, I can play everything. That's great. I love that kind of mindset, but it's not often the case. So we need to try to kind of come up with an honest evaluation of where we are as players and understand that we're not going to do everything perfectly right away and we're not going to get everything we're trying to do immediately. It's going to take time, but it's also going to take patience on our part with ourselves. So we need to be patient with ourselves when we are approaching anything in life that where there's a learning curve. You know, where it's going to take time to get better at something. For example, my channel, the Mark Z Drumcast. I think it's fun. I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. But my intent is to deliver information to people that it can help, people that want to hear it. And I've been getting a lot of positive feedback, so I think I've been doing that. But I have to get through some of those things where I'm thinking to myself, well, is it good? Is it interesting? Is it something that people need or want? But in my journey throughout the Mark Z Drumcast, I have tried many different things to improve the overall presentation, whether it be lighting, cameras, camera angles, audio, different approaches, topics, subjects, whatever it is, in an effort to get better, right? So we always want to continue to try to move forward. And if we have a mindset where we feel like we can't move forward, like we've hit that wall, this is it, this is as good as it gets, that's so not true. It's mind-blowing how not true that is. So if you kind of feel that about yourself, it is not true in the least little bit. We can always improve. We can always get better. You get out of it what you put into it. Okay, so mindset is a huge part of our growth as musicians. So remember, what did we say? Listening, right, to your bandmates, listening to our own playing, constantly evaluating what we're doing. Mindset as far as practice. Mindset as far as where we are as players and how our playing is, being open and honest about what we think about our playing. And if you are of the mindset that we've reached the end, we have to work on changing that. Okay, and putting in the time that is necessary, being patient with ourselves to work on the things that we want to improve and having the belief that we can improve them. So if anybody is out there that maybe is struggling with this particular topic, your own mindset, how you feel about your playing, or if you feel stuck in a certain place, reach out. Please say something in the comments. Reach out to any of my platforms, Mark Z Drums, instant message me or direct message me. I'll be glad to chat with you about it. I'll be glad to whatever it will take, a video call, whatever. Hop on my Patreon, the Discord server, we could talk there, whatever, because I would love to talk to people about their mindset, because the more I hear from other people, the more insight I get into what my students may be going through, what I myself, the doubts that I have, and things like that. So yeah, please reach out if you have any questions or feel any of the ways that we've talked about here on the Drumcast. That would be awesome. So please go check out my other videos on Mark Z Drums on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Like, this is my main space right here. And I do this show Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays around noonish. And I'm toying with the idea of doing a show that I can do in the evenings after people get back from work, because I would love to have some more interaction with people and really kind of in real time talk to people. So thank you very much. Watch out for my online drumming course, MarkZDrums.com. Also my Patreon at MarkZDrums. Across all socials, everything I do, please like, subscribe, follow, support, comment, thumbs up, share, all of that stuff across all of my socials with every single thing that I do. It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you on Friday. Have a great week.